each one of us have a special purpose. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and that piece fits in where it needs to fit. And if we can find that spot that makes our hearts sing, ooh, it just makes life worth living every day. I was 70 years old and I was totally broken. I was so hurt. I just could not imagine life going on. I had no purpose. I was just broken. What I was able to do was to take this point of my total breakdown, it really was bad, and turn it around and make it a positive thing, which has allowed me to go on with my work. There is darkness in this world, but if we're looking for the light, it's always there. And if we can remember that, then life is different. In the long run, the greatest healer of all, love.
I haven't learnt much in my life, as I should say jokingly, but I have learnt that you don't tell a woman her age. But in this particular instance, you're 103 years old with 80 years of clinical experience, as you know, well, in some ways, the mother of holistic medicine and professional holistic experience as a doctor. The thing that I wanted to ask about that today, straight out of the gate, was you espouse that living long and living well isn't actually so much about supplements. You're not saying that it's not, but rather it's about loving your life. And this speaks really deeply to my soul. Can you share how and when this started to precipitate in your awareness and what you actually mean by all of that?
Well, the first thing is to find out that we have, each one of us have a special purpose. We're here for our own special job to do. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. If one of the pieces is missing, if you do 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, one piece is missing, you drive yourself crazy trying to find that one piece. And that one piece fits in where it needs to fit, not any place else, and no one else can fit in that place. So we have that kind of a position in this world where each one of us has a special job to do this time. And we can just do it or not do it. And if we can find that spot that makes our hearts sing, ooh, it just makes life so much more interesting, and it's worth living. It's just worth living every day. You wake up and think, oh, another good day.
What do you think gets in the way of people being able to acknowledge themselves as the unique puzzle piece that they are? Because I feel like not everybody is open to accepting their truth for the puzzle pieces that they really are and the role that they're meant to play in the purpose at large.
Well, people get stuck in different places. They get frightened, they get hurt, they get a disease, something happens, and it's easy to get stuck. And if we get stuck and we want to stay stuck, that's our choice, because we as humans have the option of goodwill, of our own free will and of free choice. And so we have a right to choose what it is we're going to do. It's like when my husband asked for a divorce after we'd been married for 46 years, had 6 children and done all the things that we had done. And I was 70 years old, and I was on my way home from work, and I was screaming and yelling, and I was totally broken. I was so hurt. I just could not imagine life going on from that point on. And I was in my car and driving, and I was crying and yelling and just I was awful. It was just a really, really ugly place to be. And so suddenly I pulled over to the side of the road and I stopped my car and I got out and looking all around this beautiful Arizona desert and all that's there. But I'm going home to an empty house with just my dog there. And I'm used to a house full of, I had 6 children and I'm used to having something happening all the time. And now I was an empty house, an empty place, an empty life. I had no purpose. I was just broken. And I'm standing by the side of my car and thinking, this is just awful. It's ugly. It's terrible. And then I stopped and I thought, are you going to live the rest of your life like this? I don't like this. And so I'm talking to myself and saying, this is a terrible way to live. I hurt too badly. And the voice came to me, let us rejoice and be glad in it. And there was my name. And I thought, oh, okay. So I went home. I discussed this with my dog that was there. And in the morning, I went into town and I changed my license plate to be glad. So that every time I went out to my car, see that license plate. And I was, I drove for some 60 years after that through the traffic here in Phoenix, and everybody behind me had to see be glad. So what I was able to do was to take this point of my total breakdown, it really was bad, and turn it around and make it a positive thing, which has allowed me to go on with my work.
I do find that really interesting, just to make it lighthearted for just a sec, and then we'll dive back into the story. Like, isn't it really interesting when people's names like really end up speaking to the work that they do? Like our gardener, we had a gardener at some point named Mr. Wood, and I was like, no. and then it was Mr. Wood, the gardener, who chops the trees and cultivates the wood, and then you have like we have a doctor and her name's Dr. Gentle. And it's like, oh, that's perfect. We want a gentle doctor as our pediatrician. I always find it really remarkable when, people just have a name that fits their being so snugly. Mm.
Well, you can choose your own name when you are an adult. My oldest daughter tried all kinds of, her name was Anne Louise, or Annie Lou, and she thought that was a terrible name. And so she tried for years different names until she finally found one that she liked, and the rest of her life she was Analia. So she changed her name on all of her documents and everything, and she was Analia. So we have a right to choose our names and to do with them what we need to.
One of the profound pieces you were sharing in, the divorce after 46 years, 6 kids, your husband sent you a letter, and a letter to your kids and a letter to even some of your colleagues. And like you said, such an intense time of your life. And yet you're espousing the ability to let go and, be glad. And, that's so deep, that ability to be able to let go of things. I think so many of us tuning into this podcast struggle with the ability to let go. Forgive is one thing, but letting go is such a challenge for the average individual. And yet there are studies that show our ability to forgive, our ability to let go actually impact our psyche in a significant way, and that impacts the trajectory of our life. As a clinician and also in your life experience, the importance of being able to let go?
Well, I think of it this way. A bag of stuff that I'm carrying on my shoulder, and I keep looking back at it just to make sure it's still there, stuff that I've packed in there. If I keep looking like this, I'm going to get a stiff neck. I'm not going to be able to pull my neck back. It's a matter of choosing. But when I decide that I may have to move my head back if it's been there a long time. But it's a matter of choice. I can either choose to look for that dark spot over my shoulder or look to the light. And if we don't look for the light, we don't find it. If you're not looking for it, you don't find it. But, I kind of think of myself as walking down a pathway at night, and it's just a straight pathway, and I have a flashlight, and I can see one step at a time, and everything's fine. But then as I'm walking along like that, I see a little flicker of light over here, maybe to my left, and I take my flashlight and point it towards that, and all of a sudden the whole thing lights up. So if I see somebody who is struggling with their light, and I can change my direction enough to with them and with love enter into the light that they're shining, we shine a brighter light. And what that does is make the world better.
The ability to find light always being available to us for someone that's lived as long as you have is quite a remarkable statement to receive for a younger individual, is that there is always light available despite how dark it gets. And
Always.
I think a big part of your work and your book is actually about perspective, because you always say that it's all about perspective and choice and choosing your perspective. Can you share the importance of choice and perspective with us, please?
Well, I have a friend who is not as old as I am, but she's in her late 90s. And I was talking to her the other day, and she said, "Oh, I wake up every morning and I think, oh, not another day." And I thought, oh, you poor person, because I choose not to look at it that way. I choose to look at it and say, oh, wow, it's another day. And the sun did come up. It's a matter of choosing how we're going to live day by day. It's the essence and our juice that we put into what it is that we want to share with ourselves first, and then with the world around us. It's like my elder is a retired orthopedic surgeon. And when he'd finished his training, he came through Phoenix, and he said he was going to Del Rio, Texas to start his practice. And he said to me, "Mom, I'm real scared." He says, "I'm going into the world. I'm going to have people's lives in my hands." He said, "I don't know if I can handle that." And I said to him, "Well, Carl, if you think you're the one that does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you take the work that you've learned, orthopedic surgeon, which is, I'm telling you, if I broken, I want a good orthopedic surgeon to do the work. I want the kind of work that you know how to do to be done with love and with concern, and that's amazing. But you have to understand that the healing process is not your responsibility. The healing process is that of the physician within that patient. So as doctors or anybody who is working with another person, it's not our job to do that healing. It's our job to reach with love and caring to that physician within the person that we're working with, give them the information that we know and the love and the concern, and work with them as they do the healing, because each one of us takes the responsibility of doing our own healing. And it's that amazing, awesome process that each human being has. See, I kind of have this idea. This isn't a theology or anything. This is an idea. When God created the universe, and it was perfect, every exactly where it should be, and the universe is here and is running and is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then God created the human being. And he said to us, she said to us, I now have created you as the only beings on this earth who have free will and choice. So now I give you dominion over the whole universe, whole world. And we, in our arrogance, thought he said dominance. Well, that's not what he said. Dominion gives care. I give you care of the whole universe. Dominance, I'm going to take care of it. We thought it was our responsibility to take over the running of the earth, and we've done, what we've done to the earth. So I think as we take our responsibility as human beings to be what it is, and that is not only take care of this body that we are living in and helping other people to do the same, but the earth too. It's there for us to take care of.
Wow. There's a whole ode to as within, so without. And I think it's really, I do want to wind back a little bit to the earlier response in that question, because you're referring to, you referred to this concept of the physician within the patient. And I think so many of us occupy the space of the victim mindset at times, and sometimes we are there is something really deep going on. And yet there is this ode to empowerment that you are, as a doctor and a healer, it's not really on you to provide the healing as much as it is the environment for healing for the individual to find the empowerment to heal themselves with the physician within. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you another story. For me, stories carry messages that are really important. I have a friend who's a psychiatrist, and he was talking to me the other day, and he said, he's working with the medical school here in Arizona, and so he has the opportunity to talk to residents as they're doing their work. He's been in practice a long time. And so the other day, he had an opportunity to talk to this one resident. He met her at the door of the patient where they were going to go in to see the patient. But when he got up there, she had the chart in her hand, but she said, "We don't have to go in." And he said, what do you mean we don't have to go in? She says, he has Alzheimer's. He won't understand anything. And my friend said to her, now, wait a minute. He said, now you have to understand that patient is in there. He's the one with Alzheimer's. But there's another patient in there too. That's his wife. And she will understand everything that we say. And she able to interpret it into what he needs to hear in a loving way so that he'll be able to take it all in and work with it. So we've got two patients that we're working with. And not only that, but we have to touch them. And I think that's so important for us to understand the importance of touch, of actually connecting with people. While I was practicing medicine, I don't think a patient came into my office room that I didn't hug. It was important to me to get a hug from the patient when they came into the room. And it was, I received as I was giving.
There's such an ode to connection in there. And, they've done some studies of, especially through the blue zones, and I think Okinawa in Japan in particular, they have this deep sense of the ikigai, which is having a really deep sense of purpose. And a big part of our purpose is our role in community. And just as you're describing the touch and the connection, I couldn't help but reflect on that in terms of how important that must be, even just hugging every patient, to really form that connection, to really feel the integration of community, basically on a deep cellular level, I would almost say. Your thoughts on connection and the importance of community for longevity?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because what I'm feeling is that I have this life force within me that still has something to do, or I still wouldn't be here. So I'm still here. And so I have the opportunity to do what is put in front of me. And I've had such amazing experiences. Like when I was 86, my brother Carl was working with people around the world, and he found out that the maternal mortality rate was higher in Afghanistan than it was any place else in the world. And they couldn't get any information about that because they were trying to reach the women, and the men wouldn't let them talk to the women in Afghanistan. So I was just ready to retire. I was 86 years old, and I was ready to retire from my practice. And so he asked me if I would come over to Afghanistan and do work with these women. And it was such a privilege because there were 36 from 10 different um, cities or towns in Afghanistan. And we spent a whole solid week together, living together and eating together and sleeping in one room and all. It was amazing. And these women knew nothing about what went on within their body after they got pregnant. They knew how they got pregnant, but then it's like you eat a meal. You don't pay any attention to what your gut is doing in there. It's doing its job. But so they didn't know what was going on. And what we found out as to these women, I got a piece of blackboard and a chalk, and I drew anatomical pictures, and I told them what was going on and so on. Well, these women, when they understood what was happening, they took that information back. And I tell you, you give women a chance to learn something, they're going to teach it. And they went back home, and within months, the whole thing changed, because the way they were doing birthing was that after when a woman, she was not allowed to eat anything that had calcium in it, yogurt, eggs, carrots, these foods that are so important for a woman pregnant. And in fact, when they were talking to us about pregnancy, they would do this. That's low calcium tetany. So their muscles would be in a spasm when they go into labor, and they couldn't do anything. The other thing that was so bad about this, they weren't when they went into, they weren't allowed to have anything to eat or drink. So you've got a starved woman in tetany trying to push their baby out, and they couldn't do it. So someone from the outside had to push that baby out. So they had ruptured uterus, they had all kinds of fistulas and all kinds of trouble. But when these women, these 32 women, understood what it was that was going on, and that they had the important right and responsibility of feeding themselves what they needed to be fed, and they needed it too. They took that and they went home and they taught. And so it's that whole idea is, if there's just a little flicker over here and it's not, and it's looking for something more, if we have a light that we can shine with them, we're going to increase that light. And as we increase that light, the light in the world increases.
As you were coming up with the word holistic, way back when in the American Holistic Medical Association, there was health and healing, but there was also the word holy that was really important for you to incorporate into it. Can you explain that to us and why?
It took us 2 years to decide how to spell
holistic as a word when you were coined. Yeah, please. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
So that we could include health and healing and holy in the word, because we felt that if we weren't bringing the spirit into it, then we're missing the whole point. Because within us is that need to heal ourselves and love ourselves. And in the long run, the greatest healer of all, love. Because you can use a great healing procedure, and if it's done as by rote and without love, it won't do the job that it's supposed to do.
You've said that love and life are the two greatest healers. And it's quite profound.
I have these 5 L's that kind of set a pattern. The first 2 are life and love. Life and love go together, like in a pregnancy. When the mother is feeding herself, she's feeding the baby. Everything she does, the baby does. So she's femifesting the whole process until the baby is ready to be born and takes his first breath and manifests who he is. So it's that separation that steps and they become life and love are separated and they go on in their own path. So those 2 are 2 that's hanging together, but actually function separately when they are on their own. The third L is laughter. Laughter without love is cruel. It's mean. It's cold. It causes families to break up. It causes wars. But laughter with love is joy and happiness. The fourth one is labor. Labor without love is, I got to go to work. Too many diapers. This is too hard. And we drag ourselves through it. But labor with love is bliss. It's why you're doing what you're doing. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is what makes us happy. It's what makes us sing. This labor with love makes us do the inner aspect of what it is that we want to do. And the fifth one is listening. Listening without love is empty sound. You don't hear anything, or it's just whatever. It's just that. But listening with love is understanding. So these 5 L's are, for me, have given me kind of a platform. That's the word I think, to work from and to live from.
It's especially powerful for me to hear you say that, because touch wood, my wife and I, we have 2 kids, and we're contemplating whether we can have more or not. It's just because it is such a physical have more. Of course, Dr. Gladys is going to say that, mother of 6. And one of the things to hear you say, it's like, labor without the love does feel like a chore, but love with the labor actually, makes you sing. And it's really incredible. Touch wood, the journey of, just, I think how much love as a rudder, like love within listening, love within labor, love within laughter, love within life. The question that naturally emerges from that space is, how do we connect to that love within? Because some people tuning in would love to hear would love to hear the practical takeout. So when we're seeking love, to be able to bring into these, to our life, to our laughter, to our labor, to our listening, how do we go about doing that?
First of all, we have to learn to love ourselves, because if we don't love ourselves, we can't really share anything. And so to learn to love ourselves is an important thing. It took me a long time to learn that, and it's something that I was so dyslexic when I was a kid. I had to. I repeated first grade twice because I couldn't read or write, and it wasn't until and I was a class dummy and all so all of this damage that I was carrying as I was in the first 2 years of my educational life really carried over, and I didn't actually understand or accept the fact that I had to pay attention to my own life. From then on until I was 93, I I wrote books, I did things, but I always had to have somebody check them. Would you just check this? Just because I just didn't trust my own voice. But then I had a dream. And dreams are really important in my life. They've helped guide me through all kinds of stuff. I woke up from this dream and I was laughing and I was singing. And so I looked at my dream as I was still kind of in it and out of it. And I saw myself, the 9-year-old Gladys, in the tent in India where I'd grown up. And I saw myself coming out of the tent, peeking, make sure my younger brother wasn't there because he'd tattle on me because he was, I knew he was, if he was, because we had a thing that said on Sabbath morning, the only things we sang were hymns or bhajans. And I thought that was a stupid rule because I wanted to sing some other things too. So he wasn't there, and I ran as fast as I could to the mango tree and climbed clear to the top. And I'm sitting in the top of that tree, and I'm singing. I'm singing everything a caterpillar song and anything else that I wanted to sing. And all of a sudden, I'd stopped, and I looked over my shoulder, and Jesus was in the tree. And I said, and he's laughing. And I says, Jesus loves his little children, right? And he's laughing and he says, yes. So I did my singing. And then I get to thinking, did he really say yes? So I look back over my shoulder again and I said, I'm still a little children, right? And he said, yes. And he's just really cracking up. And I'm laughing and singing and realized that I could say to myself, well, if Jesus thinks it's okay, you better start paying attention to it yourself. I was 93 then. It's never too late to learn.
And think that's so remarkable, like you reclaiming and finding your voice at 93, and yeah, just the whole journey. The Jesuit said that if you show me the child before the age of 7, I'll show you the adult. How much of that do you think is true in your experience of having been a practitioner for so long?
Let me tell you 2 stories again. My son, John, who's here with me, is a retired Presbyterian minister, okay? But when he was 7 years old, he came into the living room and he says, I wish Jesus was here. And I said, well, I do too, but why you? And he says, because I have questions. And I says, oh, well, maybe I could help you. He says, but you don't have the answers. And I said, well, try me. So he says, okay, how could God be if he never got started? I mean, 7-year-old standing here. And I said, oh, well, maybe it's like a circle. It doesn't have a beginning and end. He said, I knew you didn't have the answer. And he ran off. And then my next son, he comes up when he's 4, and he comes running into the room and he says, I know something. I know something. And I said, what is it, Bobby? He says, if I make a friend and he makes a friend and he makes a friend, it's going to go all around the world and come back to me. Of course, he's a psychologist. You know, when you listen to these little people saying things like that, they are words of wisdom.
Yeah, and I think it's especially profound as I've become a coach in my life, witnessing as people become adults, they seem to have molded themselves into being a piece, back to the purpose conversation we were having, they mold themselves into a piece of the puzzle that's not actually their sovereign birthright. And it's oftentimes encouraging them to remember who they were as children and what their inspirations were and what the things that they loved were, to help them sort of whittle the edges back into the piece that they really were born to be, and to really reclaim that in some way.
Yeah, well, it's our privilege to look for that in the children. Let me tell you about a great son, a story. Just last week, this is my son John's grandson. All right, so they were standing around. They had done something in Sunday school class where they had put nickels and dimes into a dish, and they were going to send it someplace, I don't know where they needed a well. And so this is some money that these children were going to send to that well. So they're standing around this little dish that has the money in it, and there's a little girl and a little boy. They're 5 years old, and my son, Ian, my great grandson Ian, standing there. And so the little girl says, "Should we pray?" And the little boy says, "I don't think we can pray." And Ian, my great grandson, says, "Sure, we can pray. God's all around us." He says, "Look, God's all around us. We can pray. Let us pray." And so they prayed over the little dish. And, that was the teacher saw, Sunday school teachers saw these kids in their own initiative, in their own way, catching on to the message that was being given, that this little dish was sending to the people who were going to have a well.
That's so profound.
When you look for these things, they're there.
Yeah. That leads me to an interesting question, which is, well, you've been around for 103 years, and the concept of prayer, energy, frequency, living from the heart, it seems to be that we're going through quite a transition in, well, what we call consciousness. Like, things are really evolving. I'm just trying to imagine what it was like for you living, through World War II and just what life was like then and what the world is like now, and just, do you see an expansion of consciousness happening?
I think that the people that we're reaching, you and I are reaching, who are listening to us now, are reaching for their true humanity. I think because that's what's happening. There are people all around the world. Now, how come you're in Australia and I'm here? All around the world, people are looking for their true humanity. And so every time we can do something to create an understanding of what that is, I think it's really important.
I was almost going to start today's podcast there, actually, reaching for our true humanity. What do you really mean by that?
Well, here's the thing. I think that God kind of created the earth. Did I say this before?
You said he did, and he gave us the opportunity for free will, and we didn't, he offered us dominion, not domination.
Yeah. Well, I think that's we're becoming aware inside of us that we have responsibility to the earth. I mean, more and more people I know of who are really trying to do something with ecology. I've got a granddaughter who's taking care of the museum in Tucson because she's concerned about the desert. And it's people around the world are beginning to really, I think, pay attention to what's happening to our earth. I mean, sure, they're the people that are trying to destroy it, and they'll always be around because they're there. Even the best of us think bad thoughts sometimes, but it's just that there is darkness in this world. But if we're looking for the light, it's always there. It's just there. And if we could remember that, it's then life is different.
You mentioned earlier dreams, and they have played a significant role in your life. And I look back at some of Carl Jung's work as well, and just what a champion he was for the dream world and what dreams espouse. I'd love to hear more about that, but then also, like, even at 103, you've got a 10-year plan ahead of you. And I think so many of us struggle to even have a 10-year plan at 30, at 40. Can you speak to us the power of dreams and having these plans and these goals and these, like, literal dreams, but then also out there dreams in the world?
My plan is to have villages for living medicine around the world. Well, there are these blue zones that have been identified around the world where people are looking for that. And I think that's the kind of thing that when a person steps onto the property, the healing starts. In other words, it's holy ground. It's a place where people live and love, and the essence of the actual earth is one that people are walking on earth that is honored and is holy. And so it's that kind, because every step that we take on earth should be a holy step. It kept, but yeah, you can't do that. But that's the way it is.
Living medicine, that's a really broad, profound concept. And so you visualize people living in these communities that are enabling people to live their truest purpose and heal themselves deeply within, find self-love, care for each other. Are these the kind of values that we're witnessing in these living medicine communities?
Yes, my 10-year plan is that we're going to grow into that because it's there. It's like my two sons told me, one about being a minister and the other one about being a psychologist. These are things that as little people they knew they were going to have to do. Well, my great grandson said basically the same thing. So, and it's not just my family. I mean, these are people all around the world who are reaching for this. And if you reach for it, you'll get it. You'll get it. You'll get it in dreams. You'll get it in little people talking to you. You'll get it in some old person talking to you, or your friend, or your wife, or actually somebody that you don't like very much. And then what are you going to do? If you can find something about somebody that isn't a very nice person in your opinion, if you can find something about a person like that you can actually look at and say, well, that's a good thing. I think that's really important. I know a man that, is there. Some people just have difficult personalities, and this person does. But boy, does he have a beautiful garden. He plants these beautiful flowers and plants and so on, and he keeps up this beautiful garden. And so that's the way he's expressing the things that he's needing to express from his soul.
Because there's a big part in your book that's dedicated to learning to, putting us to aim to love everyone, and trying to find a way to do that. Aim to love everyone was a takeaway I got from your book.
Yes, it is. You try to find something that is really good about another person, because we all have some good part there.
Another takeaway that I got from the book really spoke to me, because having the faith of a Sikh, and your relationship with India is not lost on me, and I'm hoping to ask some questions about that as well. But yeah, the faith of a Sikh is to always be learning. And you say in your book that everything is your teacher. Everything, absolutely everything is your teacher. And that is my religion. I really love the way you describe that, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts on that concept with the audience here today.
Even illnesses have something to teach us. I have a story. I had a young woman, I had been taking care of her for a number of years, and she had chronic shoulder pain. And we couldn't figure out why she had this shoulder pain. But I'd been working with her for several years, and she was in my office again. And we had gone through the whole process and hadn't come up with anything that I could really put my finger on. I could say, well, stop doing that or start doing something different or something. But so we finished a session, and she got up and stood around and picked up her purse and put it over her shoulder, and it was so heavy. And the two of us looked at each other. All this time she'd been carrying this heavy purse on her shoulder, but that hadn't recognized that was causing her shoulder pain. In other words, for me as her doctor and for her, we stood there and hugged each other, because finally the two of us had gotten it. The way we were looking at medicine as a war against disease and pain, trying to eliminate disease and, minimize pain, I think is wrong. I think we don't want to get rid of disease. We want to look at the disease and figure out what it's telling us, and then see what we can do to do what is the right thing to do for the process. In other words, not trying to get rid of it, but to understand it.
And that sounds a lot like listening with love, actually, but listening to what the disease is communicating to us through the body. Touch wood.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. Diminishing sight, deeper insight. What does that mean?
When you ask me questions, or when I'm listening to somebody around the world asking these questions, I have the opportunity to have a deeper focus on what it is that I can share with you. It's something that is there to be understood, and it should be understood. And as we work with it and find it, then that's the insight into, well, actually, sometimes a simple thing like the shoulder purse, but the insight is getting into the cause of what's causing things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. At this particular juncture, I have to ask you about India, your relationship with India. I know not all of it was positive. Some kids trying to rub the white off your skin. But yeah, you also met Gandhi in your lifetime, and that was a transformative experience for you. Yeah, can you just tell us about your relationship with India and some interesting parts there? I'd love to hear about Gandhi and, yeah, just how much that informs who you are, because you grew up in India.
Yeah, my mom went into labor with me at the Taj Mahal. She's kind of a drama queen, but I was born, my birth story is very complicated and so on. But anyway, I was born in India, and I didn't even get to the States until I was 10 years old, because my parents took their work in the villages. To me, I loved the life. And so I was 10 years old. I was on a train. We were going to come to the United States because every 6.5 years, my parents had a furlough so they could come home and meet with their families and so on, and then go back. So I was going to be coming to America, and I was angry. I didn't want to leave India. I didn't like America. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to understand what it was. So I'm in the train, and the train pulls in the station, and it's slowing down, and there's a huge crowd outside. But that's not there are always crowds around in India. But this was a huge crowd, and in front of that crowd was a small man dressed in a white dhoti with a lathi staff, walking along. And I had my face plastered on the window, looking out, seeing what was going on. And he moved right in line of my vision where I was looking out. And a little girl handed him a flower, and he looked down and got the flower, and he looked up, and when he looked up, he looked straight into my eyes. And I didn't know what happened. I still don't know what happened, but I felt something as a 10-year-old that I knew this was important. But 30 years later, I knew what the connection was, because my parents, when India was split, the Mohammedans killing the Hindus and Hindus killing, it was torn apart. And Gandhi was trying very, very hard to pull the whole thing together. And my parents worked with him. They were on the same platform with him. And they were friends enough that Gandhi, my mother, a blue shawl, which I have upstairs, and my dad a blanket, funny put blanket. So it was that kind of a connection that I felt was started when I saw and connected with Gandhi. And then this was going on all through the time that my parents were working with the people there too.
Hey, you're Inspired Tribe. I want to take a quick sec. I wanted to share something today with you that is really dear to my heart, and it's actually what keeps the entire ecosystem around the Inspired Evolution thriving, my one-on-one coaching. So it's basically coaching that helps you live a spiritually aligned life. I coach people from all different types of walks of life. These people are leaders and they're looking to have an incredible spiritual impact in the lives that they're leading for themselves, and then also lead in alignment to their values. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a few people that have also transformed through my coaching, and here's what they have to say.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing.
Then my corporate banking job wasn't really doing it.
You feel like you're not making progress towards your goals.
And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate because you won't be disappointed.
As you guys can see, there's a lot of people all over the world from all these different corners experiencing incredible transformations. I don't think, if I can say humbly myself, that there is anything quite like this somewhere else online. Most people that, have channels that, grow and grow and grow don't really focus on one-to-one offerings. I have just found that it is the most profound space where you can bring yourself in a private container and really just share what's going on for yourself. And if you want to book in for that call with me, touch base, it's www.amrit.coach/life. That's www.amrit.coach/life. There is a link in the show notes below to book in that call. And yeah, if you want to take your journey further, if you want to dive in deeper, and you really want to live a spiritually aligned life, if it's for you, please do check it out. And without too much further ado, once again, for your spirit, for yourself, today's podcast. When you look back and join all these dots, one of the parts of the book, The Well-Lived Life, also speaks to the fact that we are never alone. And I think that means something on the physical dimension as well, but it also means something spiritually as well, right? Because when you see these dots connecting over the lives, like over 30 years, like that's quite remarkable.
Yes. Yes, our lives are interwoven with each other. It's a very real thing. I think it's so amazing that now we can do what we're doing right now. I just think it's awesome.
That was going to lead me, as we start to wrap up today, your views on retirement, because it doesn't seem like you're slowing down. And maybe there's some wisdom in that, the fact that, I think even with the Inspired Evolution, one of my goals is to, touch wood, build a life that I never really want to retire from. Like the work feels so much like play that there's love in everything I do. And I saw so much inspiration from the way you're conducting yourself in the world, Gladys. Can you share some thoughts on, your thoughts on retirement?
Well, I retired and went to Afghanistan because they needed help. And, since then, there's always been something to do. We founded Beyond Holistic Living Medicines, takes the next step. And the work that I'm doing now is with living medicine. And it has its essence and its life and so on. So there's works. But if we're looking for it, let me tell you, you find it.
I love that. And Gladys, just a personal question. Are you afraid of death and dying in any way? Because I think so many of us, especially those that are younger, or actually so many that are struggling with illness as well, there is a real palpable fear of death and what it means for us.
Well, I'm not afraid of death. And one of the reasons I'm not afraid of death is in watching different family members and so on take the transition in the way they did. My sister was the most loving person ever. And so she was 98, and she was perfectly healthy, and then she got the flu, and she didn't get over it. So she was really in the process of dying, and her youngest son and his wife were with her. And all of a sudden, she's lying there, and she starts singing hymns and bhajans, and she stops and every so often, and she says, "And Aya is here." And to me, that was so important because our Aya taught us how to use the dholak, the two-side drum, and I wasn't very good at it. Margaret got great at it, and so I can when my nephew and niece told me about what they were watching. Mother was talking about and singing these hymns and stuff. Her voice was soft at first, but it got stronger as she was going into this, and it got stronger, and then it got really strong, and she died. And I could just see her with the ayah drumming and singing and walking into heaven, whatever that is. It's that I've had such glorious experiences of being with people who are making the transition and watching them live right through into the transition. So it's like, for me, it's like dropping off to dream. I come to the point I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to dream. Well, I feel like when my time has come and I've done the work I need to do, I'll take that step and go into that dream and through that door.
Do you believe we come back from the dream? Do you believe in reincarnation?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I have patients who, and myself, and stories about, people who have remembered things, and my children who have remembered things, and all kinds of stories about past memories.
Profound. And one of the themes that seems to be ever present throughout this conversation is service. You seem to be, you retired and then off you went to Afghanistan. It's like, that sounds like work. Your thoughts on service for living a well-lived life.
Oh, yeah. It's so important because you do what you can do. Like if you can't see, well, I'm listening to audiobooks and my insight's better.
I love that. And yeah, there's a little piece that I wanted to unpack with you as well is there's a gentleman who, his name's Stephen Jenkinson. I've had him on the podcast, and he talks about the difference between becoming older versus becoming elder. And he talks about how there's a dearth of eldership in today's society. A lot of people become older, but they don't necessarily become elders. And he talks about how the difference between the two can be distilled through asking two simple questions, which is, what did you know and what did you do about it? And the responses to those questions will help you identify whether you just became older or whether you became an elder. And I just wanted to put that on the table here and get your thoughts on that.
Oh, I agree. I think we as elderly people have had experiences that we can share and have had wisdom that we have worked through that we would like to share. But we have to acknowledge that and not accept it. I'm walking with a wheelchair and with a walker, not wheelchair. But, there's things I can't do now, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that I can do. And so it's the reaching for the possibilities that are still available to us as the elderly people. And they're awesome. So I encourage us as we're going, because, we're not getting any younger. And I see no reason why we can't be the elderly. And I agree 100%.
Dr. Gladys, it is such an incredible gift and opportunity to share this time with you here today. To say it's an honor and a privilege is beyond humbling. To just, you're by far the oldest person we've had on the podcast. And I would say just the eldership that you embody and the inspiration that you embody for me. For the longest time, the moniker of the Inspired Evolution podcast was to live a life you love. And The Well-Lived Life, the book you've written, I'm going to put a link to it in the description below for people to reach out and read. There is so many good nuggets in there, and I think it's one of those books that everybody should read. And just what you're embodying just means so much to an individual such as myself. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing your time here with us today, but also just for who you are. Thank you so much, Dr. Gladys.
It's my privilege, and thank you for doing it. If you didn't do this, I'd be the song that's.
Oh, thank you so much for your blessings. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into these episodes. I am so in awe of what's being created. As you can see, the guests just continue to blow me away. I'm so inspired to evolve into the beings that are here on the Inspired Evolution as well. And man, it's not lost on me. Like, this is all enabled by you hitting subscribe to the channel. As you subscribe, the platform grows, the channel grows, the conversations become richer and fuller. And I feel like I'm having these conversations with you in the comment section below. Feel free to comment, please. That's me writing back to you still. It's just incredible what is being created here. And it's not lost on me that it's absolutely generated and in thanks by everything that you guys are enabling here on the episode. Thank you so much for your subscription. Thank you so much for spending your hard-earned time, energy, love into this podcast. I really appreciate you listening in every day in every way. It means so much to me. If you have tuned in all the way through to the end of this episode, I just, as your brother, again, deeply grateful. The next best episode for you to continue your journey with the Inspired Evolution, I would say, is to tune in to Stephen Jenkinson on Die Wise. We've had a couple of conversations with him about elderhood, and the second one was about dying and death and how it's so important to reflect upon that in order to live a really well-rich life. Those two episodes are on screen for you now, for you to be able to continue your journey further. As always, my ode is for here to support and champion you to basically stay inspired, keep evolving. See you in the next one.